everyone, it's Max, and today I'm here with the spooky book tag. When I was looking for tags to go with Halloween and the spooky season, this came up. I thought it was perfect. I watched Heather from Bookables' version, so I will leave that linked down below, but without further ado, let's just get into the tag. The first prompt is Corn Maze. What is a book that had you lost and confused from the beginning? And for this, I'm going with Night Film by Marisha Pessl. Now, this is not in a bad way. I just think she masterfully did this plot and twists and turns and mystery, and this is about a journalist who's kind of disgraced, but when the daughter of this cult leader, film director guy dies mysteriously, he decides to investigate the death. This was crazy. It kept me guessing the entire time. I listened to it on audiobook, and I kind of wish I didn't, because I know that there are like mixed media elements and there's a lot of cool things to like actually reading it, but I just listened to it and it was a great audiobook experience, but it just was so crazy and it had me guessing from the beginning until the end. The next prompt is Haunted House. What's a book with a creepy setting? And for this, I'm going with Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This is about a girl who is sent to her cousin who has recently married this guy and is living in this kind of almost derelict manor, and she's sent there because her cousin sends this very scary-ish note to her dad, and she realizes that this mansion is not all it seems to be. And this was definitely creepy. The mansion was very scary and it was just done very, very well. And I think it's kind of the epitome of a haunted house, but not quite. Next prompt is Ghost Boyfriend, who's your eternal book boyfriend. And I just finished filming a video where I talk about 2 of like my top book boyfriends. So I thought I would talk about someone new, and that's Aragorn from The Lord of the Rings. Now this is more movie Aragorn, because I feel like in the book he's not as like charming and attractive because, you know, Viggo Mortensen was very attractive in this and I love him. And I hadn't seen the movies until March, but my best friend was like, there's definitely a moment where like it shows that you're growing up, where you go from like really wanting Legolas to really wanting Aragorn. And I'm like, you're right, because Legolas is also attractive. I mean, it's Orlando Bloom, but something about Aragorn just like gets me. And he's like really great in The Fellowship of the Ring. I'm holding up the 2 towers, but he's a new book boyfriend of mine and I love him. Caramel Apple Suckers. What is the best Halloween book you've read? And I'm going with Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Maniscalco. I think that this was just a perfect series to read around Halloween. I don't think I read any of them near Halloween, but it is the perfect series to do so. This is about a girl named Audrey Rose who is really interested in forensic anthropology, and she kind of works under her uncle, but when Jack the Ripper starts killing women in London, she gets on the case with Thomas Cresswell, who's the love of my life. But I love this series. I think it is so, so great. I recently read her newest book as an ARC, and I also really enjoyed that. And I think it also works during this spooky season. But this series is just phenomenal. There's 4 books. The first one is about Jack the Ripper. The second book is about Dracula. Third is about Houdini. And the fourth is about H.H. Holmes in Chicago. And they are just so good. I love Audrey Rose. I love Thomas Cresswell, and please pick them up. Vampires and Everything. What is your least favorite Halloween trope? For this, I am going with pumpkin. Now, I'm fine with like regular pumpkins, like just like carving or having them outside, but I am not into pumpkin flavored things. And I'm not trying to be like, I'm not basic like them. I just don't like the flavor of pumpkin. Pumpkin pie, hate it. Pumpkin spice lattes, not a fan. But just because I don't like the flavor of pumpkin, nor really the smell. So like, I'm just not into the whole pumpkin fad. And I mean, nothing against people who like it. I can totally understand. I know a lot of people like pumpkin. I just don't like the taste, and I'm not a big fan of the smell. So I am going with pumpkin. And then what's funny is the next prompt is pumpkin. What is your favorite Halloween trope thing? And I'm going with the based on true events trope. For movies, for books, for scary stories, I love it. I am a sucker for the based on true events. Even though I am a wimp and I get very scared, I love horror movies. And when they say based on true story, they've got got me, they hook me, and I love it. Evil Incarnate, who is the best villain? For this, I'm going with all the villains in Throne of Glass. I think they're really well done, and I think there's like the mini bosses to get to like the big boss, and I did really, really like them, and I'm not gonna say anything because I feel like almost all of them are spoilers, but I did really enjoy how she did villains in this series. Ouija Board, a book that deals with things you don't want to mess with. And for this, I'm going with The House at the Bottom of the Lake. And that is because this is all about a haunted house at the bottom of a lake. So like yes, I love scuba diving. I scuba dive a lot and I really enjoy it, but like being trapped in a haunted house while you have a limited air source is literally a nightmare. Like, it's a nightmare. This is a short story about this couple who on their first date discover a cabin at the bottom of a lake, and they start to go and explore, and they realize it is not all it seems. It's so good, it's so scary, and I loved it. Full Moon, what character do you want to turn into in a full moon? Now this is kind of like, okay, disclaimer, I'm not religious. I don't believe in heaven and hell, but if they were real, I would want to turn into either God or the devil, because I would love to see what heaven and hell were like. Or like for any sort of religion, that sort of dichotomy. So like Zeus and Hades, or I'm not gonna try and do the rest. I'm very unknowledgeable about this, but that's kind of what I mean. I'd love to see, one, if it's real. So like that would basically like answer my question. And two, I would love to see what heaven and hell were like. And so that's my answer. You know, they're in the Bible. The Bible is a book. Again, I don't believe in God and the devil and everything, but this would kind of answer the age-long question of, is it real? Voodoo Doll, what author would I love to take control of and write from? And I'm going with Brandon Sanderson. I love him and I love his books, and if I would be able to get like a glimpse of like his mind and see like what his plans were, or like read Rhythm of War before it comes out at the end of November, you know, I'd be for it. And yeah, so Brandon Sanderson for sure. I would love to just like get an insight in his mind and like write with him. Black Cat, what red flags do you look for when starting a book? Now I do want to say that black cats are not unlucky. I have a black cat, and even though she drives me insane, she's not a bad cat. Like, please don't think that black cats are bad. But some red flags that I am not a fan of are unnecessary sexism, racism, or homophobia. Like, I feel like a lot of authors blame it, just being like, oh, it's medieval. And I'm like, it's fantasy. Like, you're literally creating your own world. You could have women be the rulers. You can have black people more like high up than white people. You could do whatever you want. It's fantasy, but people blame the fact that it's kind of based on like a historical time period. They're like, oh, well, because of that, it's racist. I'm like, but it's fantasy, so you can do whatever you want. And I've really stopped like allowing that, except for like nonfiction. And like, you know, then I'm like, okay, yes, you're telling like a true story of what happened. You can't like take those liberties. But for fantasy or just like regular fiction, I've stopped like giving allowances for this sort of thing, where it's like if they make their main character racist or sexist, I'm like, okay, but you could have made that main character not racist. And I feel like my best example is Ken Follett and The Pillars of the Earth, where his main character cheats on the love interest. And I'm just like, why? I get that women were considered trash back then, and I get that a lot of men cheated, but why does your main character, who's not a real person in history, have to cheat? Like that sort of thing, where I'm like, yeah, I don't like that at all. Another thing is bad parents, and I'm not talking about villains. I'm just talking about when a parent just sucks for no reason. I also hate that one. And abusive relationships, where it's not like the plot point being like, no, he's abusive, she's moving on, like sort of thing. I mean more like when it's just abusive and they kind of are like, yeah, it's fine. I'm like, but it's not. The last prompt is Witch's Brew, a book that brings in a whole bunch of components but it somehow works. And for this, I'm going with Jane Unlimited by Kristin Cashore. I read this back in like February and I thought it was fascinating. It is a book that tells the same story but in 4 different genres. So there's fantasy, there's mystery, there's like spy, and there's like sci-fi or something like that. And it was fascinating. It's about this girl who goes with her best friend to her friend's like mansion, and stuff happens. And it was interesting because it was like, there was a different resolution for each genre, but you could see those things in each different story no matter what the genre was. And it all just crazy came together, and it was fascinating, and I really enjoyed it. All right, everyone, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you soon with another video. Bye!